Welcome to the final days. Today is February 17, 2019. The images we are viewing were obtained yesterday from the Federal Aviation weather cameras in Alaska and Canada. Each image is 10 minutes apart from the next. They form a time-lapse video when strung together, such as the one playing now, taken from one of the cameras in Gustavus, Alaska. We don't see things like this in the lower 48 states for two reasons. One, the chemtrailing in the lower 48 states is extremely heavy, and two, these celestial objects are easier to see from the far north. We are going to watch the sun hide behind a dark nebula in this video. We will also be viewing some total eclipses and a very strange disappearing sun, so stick around, it gets better. The purpose of this channel is to show the viewers that we are in the final days before Christ comes, described throughout the New Testament. Thus, to faithful believers, these signs are very good news and cause for celebration, which I will explain later in this video. Jesus is describing the last days in Luke chapter 21, verse 25, when he says, "And there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and in the earth distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the seas and the waves." So we're going to be looking at the signs of the end times here that pertain to the sun, the moon, and the stars, basically the signs in the sky. And as you can see in this video from Gustavus, Alaska, a very large celestial object is in the sky. Dr. Claudia Albers, a physicist who has a YouTube channel, says these are stellar cores. A stellar core, she tells us, is a burned-out star. She mentions that there are many of these stellar cores throughout our solar system as another planetary system passes through ours. Our next sky anomaly is viewed from the southwest-facing camera in Barrow, Alaska. It is 10 minutes before midnight and the moon is heading downward. I'll show you a daytime picture of what we are looking at so that you'll know what these bright, glaring objects up in the front of the picture are. You can see that they are security lights. So let's go back to the nighttime sky and view the video. The moon up in the upper right corner is going down for the night, and now it's after midnight. The night goes on rather uneventful, and then by 4:30 in the morning, glance over on the right side of the screen. There is a huge orb in the sky that just shows up at 4:30 in the morning. And as the sun starts to become a little bit lighter, as it starts to come up and morning continues, the orb becomes more pronounced. But then it is quickly washed out by the sunlight as the sun rises. Let's play this video again. It begins just before midnight, last night, Saturday, on the 16th. And we go through 27 screens where we don't see anything except the moon going down in the first three. So this is 4.5 hours of nothing. And then at 4:30 in the morning we see the large orb over on the right side of the screen. And it's there for a little while. And as the sunlight starts to come into view, it washes out the orb, the image of the orb. Our next video is from the southeast-facing weather cam in Pelican, Alaska. At 8:40 in the morning, the sun is starting to come up from behind the mountain. Notice the black dot in the middle of the sun. It is a piece of equipment a couple hundred miles from Earth made to track in perfect synchronization with our sun. This equipment casts its own shadow upon the water, proving it's not a camera or lighting issue. The black dot can be seen, or it cannot be seen from all angles, as you'll see as we go through the video. The black dot hardware is capable of producing an incredible amount of glare, spreading out in a circular direction for hundreds of miles. The amount of glare is controllable, and it does fluctuate according to the operator's control, and we will see more on this in a few minutes. Something interesting in these Pelican images is the oddly shaped, colorful reflection that swings across the screen as we go through the time-lapse video. This is the reflection of a craft that works with the equipment casting the black shadow in the water. I know this because we've seen this craft hundreds of times in the Universal News Media videos. This craft is not always visible, which is the case here, but we still see its reflection swing across the screen. At Minks Island, Alaska, the sun is rising at 7:08 a.m. We see the black dot reflecting upon the water again. The black dot, as mentioned earlier, is not always visible. It depends upon the angle of the equipment in relation to the camera. In frames 4 and 5 of this video clip, we see a large celestial object near the left side of the sun. We know it cannot be a lens flare because it is being partially illuminated by the sun. A lens flare cannot be illuminated by the sun. It cannot react to the sun because a lens flare is only a reflection inside the camera. Let's look at those frames close up. It looks as if the orb actually moves away from the sun to the left, so it's probably not a stationary object. Here it is close up with some contrast added. It is definitely a round object of some sort. These are some of the signs and wonders in our sky that Jesus told us we would see near the end of the age. There's nothing special about this old video from Portage Glacier, Alaska, a year ago. The sun is seen passing behind a post. The importance of these frames is that we are looking at the real sun. Notice how the sun passes behind a post, and the post cannot hide the sun because the real sun is too large to be hidden behind a small post. We are not looking at the large round glare which is produced by the black dot. In this video, we are looking at the real sun. Facing westward in Burwash in the Yukon Territory, we see what looks like the sun, but it's actually not. As it passes behind a thin post, it completely disappears from view. The reason this is happening is because the light source we are viewing is the glare produced by the black dot equipment that reflects upon the water surface. Where is the real sun? It is currently behind a dark nebula that we will be looking at in a minute. Just to refresh your memory on the approximate size of the real sun, here's an inset of the real sun we just saw moments ago in Portage Glacier. Really, how can a sun that large disappear behind a thin flagpole, if you think about it? We see this same phenomena occurring in Drumheller, Alberta, Canada. The light source is seen traveling across the sky and is then completely hidden behind a tiny street light. To refresh your memory again on the size of the real sun, here's the inset from Portage Glacier. I really don't think the real sun would actually disappear behind a street light. We are going to view an entire solar eclipse that occurred yesterday on many different cameras. This one is the southeast-facing weather cam in Chilkat, Alaska. First, notice the post on the very right edge of the screen. In just a minute, the sun is going to instantly disappear behind it like magic. Okay, as the sun rises at 8 o'clock in the morning, we see that it will soon pass behind a celestial object in its path. Some contrast helps to see this celestial object that will soon be eclipsing the sun. The celestial object is actually much closer to the Earth than the sun. So as the black dot with its enormous circular glare passes in front of the celestial object, our real sun goes behind it. However, the artificial glare is no match for the real sun, and the landscape becomes very dark as the celestial object eclipses our sun. Also, notice the pink reflection of the craft swing across the screen during the eclipse. That reflection always points to the exact location of the eclipsing planet, which we will look at in a minute. Notice how the landscape gets bright again once the sun passes the object. And then, in an instant, the sun disappears behind that wooden post. Within a minute, it goes from looking like this to this. Let's see this again. The sun rises on the left, moves toward the celestial object. The landscape suddenly darkens as the black dot with its large glare moves in front of the celestial object, and the real sun moves behind it. And when the sun reaches the wooden post, it disappears completely. Now, focus your attention on the pink reflection of the craft. It always tells us exactly where the eclipsing planet is. Some contrast helps to be able to see the eclipsing planet. If we draw a perfectly straight line from the pink reflection to the black dot, the eclipsing planet always falls upon that black line. I've never seen an exception to this. And then the landscape returns to brightness again once it's all over. Now that you know how these eclipses work, it will help you to understand the dark nebula that we are looking at. In this video from south-facing camera in Attawapiskat, Ontario in Canada, notice how bright everything is as the sun rises over on the left. The sun suddenly appears to shrink down to 1/5 of its size. That's because the real sun has gone behind the dark nebula and the manufactured glare is in front of it. Again, the artificial light is no match for the real sun because it almost looks like nighttime. The large triangles are used to obscure the image, but they are not produced from within the camera like a lens flare is. We know this because the clouds are in front of the triangles part of the time. Clouds can never be in front of a camera-produced lens flare. Eventually, the real sun emerges from behind the nebula, and the landscape suddenly brightens. Let's run through this again. The sun rises on the left, and the landscape is nice and bright. The sun suddenly shrinks down to 1/5 its size, causing the landscape to darken. The manufactured glare moves across the sky in front of the helium-4 dark nebula. Notice the amazing texture of this nebula as the light moves back and forth across it. Wouldn't it be great if we could get a closer look at this interesting object? To me, this is just amazing. The light passes over the nebula, and it's tracking in perfect synchronization with the sun. The landscape suddenly brightens as the real sun emerges from behind the nebula, and the sun resumes its normal size again. This is another biblical sign of the end of the age, described by Jesus in the New Testament. The east-facing camera in Petersburg, Alaska, shows a very heavily cratered, fast-rotating red celestial object. It's a bit difficult to see through the haze, so I've added some contrast to bring it out better. moving back and forth through the frames shows how fast this thing is rotating. We know this cannot be a lens flare of the sun because the sun only rotates once every 27 Earth days. This object is rotating much, much faster than that. Even the close-ups are very faint. I've made some close-ups, but I apologize that they're so faint. I've added some contrast to some of the close-ups to bring out detail. The craters really show up well in these close-up images. It's fun to imagine how huge these craters must be, because I believe this object is millions of miles away yet. This is really tough to see on anything but a large screen, and for that I apologize. I apologize to anybody who's viewing this on a small mobile device. On the very right side of the screen is an enormous red celestial object. Here's some contrast added to help see it better. The black dot, which produces the circular glare, emits a black beam in preparation for an eclipse. The pink reflection points to the eclipsing celestial object as it swings across the screen. Again, we could draw a straight line from the pink reflection to the black dot, and the eclipsing object always falls right on that line. Just another sign of the last days. I believe that much of this technology, if not all of it, is fallen angel technology. The fallen angels have been here far longer than we have, and they're far smarter than we are. Untold trillions have no doubt been spent to keep the masses from knowing what is coming upon the earth. The enemies of Christ do not want you to know how close we are to the end, so that you cannot turn your life over to Christ while there's still time. Approaching the last days is cause for celebration for faithful followers of Jesus Christ, because he is removing from earth those believers who are living in holiness. This is commonly called the rapture. The New King James Version, Luke chapter 21, verse 36 reads, "Watch therefore and pray always that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass." Jesus is referring to the Great Tribulation. He is saying that those who are counted worthy will escape all of God's wrath. To be counted worthy, we must be living in holiness. Most churches nowadays don't preach on holiness because it causes them to lose church members and income. We are at the doorstep of the Great Tribulation, a 7-year period of God's wrath upon the earth foretold in the Bible. Most people won't survive it. This approaching planetary system is part of the Great Tribulation. Please accept Jesus Christ while there is still time, so that you are not left behind to see the Great Tribulation. These next few screens will tell you how to accept Christ into your life in the event you are seeking him. Simply pause the screen if you need more time to read the text. In our next video, we will take a look at one of the other signs of the final days, as described by Christ in the New Testament. Thanks everyone for watching. Please click on the thumbs up so that this video will show up in searches for those in need of this information.